Today we'll be kicking it back with more budget-friendly IMs. This one in particular also has a nice laid-back sound. This one is the Whizzer BS1s. Let's talk about it. Right now, disclaimer, this was sent out to me for review by Keep High Five, but this won't affect my review in any way, shape, or form. Also, this is going to be more of a gaming review versus an audiophile review. I'll be touching on audiophile aspects and whatnot. I'll go through the whole range, but I will be using that and explaining how that will affect its performance in games. And with that being said, let's get started. Once again, here we have the Whizzer BS1, designed by j.idea, making it also a work of wheels. Anyway, inside the box, you're going to get the IEMs or earbuds connected to the cable. You're going to get a carrying bag, which inside has not one, but two little bags of different size ear tips, which we will get more in detail about later. I should mention that on the IEMs, you do get a set of medium-sized large hole ear tips, so, you know, just so you know. With that aside in the bag, you're also going to get a little clip for your shirt in case you need, like, stability, I guess. And other than that, you're going to get a manual and a little warranty card. Alright, starting on the cable, it's a braided cable that comes with your standard straight 3.5mm jack with a little bit of protection for whatever reason. As for the braided cable itself, while it does feel nice and premium and thick, it's not my favorite type as it is prone to kinking if you kind of like twist it a little bit and try to straighten out if you're not careful. So just take it easy if you're going to straighten out the cable or any cable kind of like this. Moving up to the split, it is simple and clean, but it does feel quite durable, so that's good. Now on the model with the microphone, you get a 3-button inline microphone with volume controls and device controls, and on the back you'll find a little dot which is the microphone itself. Alright, now for those of you who will be using the inline mic, this little guy right here, this is how it's going to sound. And honestly, it sounds pretty okay for an inline microphone, all things considered. But it still is an inline mic, so there are limits to it and, you know, how much it'll, like, cancel out in terms of, like, background noise. So let's test that right now. So I'm going to type on my keyboard, which is sunflower switches. They are tactile switches that have a reputation for being kind of on the slightly louder side, which people like because of thok and clack and whatnot, depending on how you set up your keyboard. But we're just going to type on it so you get an idea of, like, if you can hear my voice over the typing or the typing over my voice. But with that being said, that is the mic. Now as for attachments, these cables are permanently affixed to the IEMs, but they at least feel very sturdy, so I'm not too worried about them. Now for the IEMs themselves, they use a pretty standard earbud design, though these are open back, as you can tell here by the grills, which along with the outer half of the shell is completely made of metal. Parts like the cable connection as well as the inner halves are made of plastic. And as you can tell, the inner halves have pretty large vents, which is probably part of the open back design. And as it's part of the inner half, the nozzles themselves are also made of plastic, but at least they have a little metal grill to keep your dirty earwax out. Now for those with a sense of vanity, here's how they look like on my head, and honestly it doesn't look that bad. It's actually kind of nice. They got a pretty nice simple design with a little bit of detail on them. They don't stick out like a sore thumb both visually and physically, as they're not too big, which also makes them not too heavy either. But on the comfort spectrum, I had mixed feelings with them. They were kind of okay depending on which ear tip I use. Due to the smaller size and more shallow fit, I preferred more smaller tips so they would like sit in my ears and seal a little bit better. And even then I found the comfort to just be about average, so it's not the most amazing, but your mileage will vary depending on the shape and size of your ears. Now when it comes to the sound of the Whizzer BS1s, they have a warm-ish kind of sound. I think overall I'd say it's kind of like a relaxed, warmish kind of sound, and it may have to do something in part due to the fact that it is an open back set, which is pretty uncommon on IEMs, especially at like its price range. This is like a $25-ish IEM and it's open back, and that does affect the sound a bit, but not in the ways that I had expected. Like, due to the open back design, I was expecting the bass to be kind of anemic, which it actually wasn't. I still got a decent amount of bass, but it was I think what I would expect from a bassier open back set, in which I had some bass. It was a pretty okay bass, texture's okay, but it didn't have like the greatest, deepest reach into the sub bass regions. The sounds were more prominent from like the mid to upper bass regions. However, I would say they were more boomy than they were punchy, and even then the boom was kind of like a light, softer, relaxed boom. And when it came to punchiness, I wouldn't say it was very punchy at all, but it had moments here and there depending on like what sound was being played. But overall, it was it's a relaxed bass. There is a thump, but it is a very chill bass, which some people may like and some people may not. Now moving up to the mids, they were overall okay. It's like a relaxed kind of mid-range, which seems to be the whole theme of this IEM. And this is like a good thing and a bad thing to some people depending on how you like your sound. So the mids aren't necessarily like all that recessed. They're not really like pushed forward either. They're just kind of like almost at a balanced range. However, they lack like an impact where they don't like strike out at you when you hear any sounds of that mid-range area. It's just kind of a smooth, easygoing sound. It is a clean sound, but I do think it lacks a bit of texture, and that might affect that impact, if you know what I mean. It just doesn't like pop out at you very much. It's just kind of there, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because it's a very easygoing, smooth sound. You can listen to it for a long time without ever getting fatigued by it. And speaking of fatigue, let's move on to like the highs, because The highs in these can go pretty darn high, but luckily they roll off like towards the very top. So we get a pretty good higher range. But interestingly, I would say the highs are also sort of on the relaxed side, where they're not like overly presented and they don't really get harsh or sharp. But some people might not like that because, once again, it just doesn't pop out at people as much. And some people like that for that sense of higher amounts of clarity. The sound is clean, but I guess because of this, it does lack a little bit of clarity, or at least that feeling of clarity, if that makes sense at all. Overall, like I said, this whole entire thing just has a very relaxed, laid-back sound. Like, it never gets too harsh, nor too, like, impacting or intense, but at the same time, it's not necessarily so chilled out that it's anemic and boring. Like, it's a nice, easygoing sound. You can listen to it for, like, a long period of time. But, you know, with that being said, let's move on into like the imaging and soundstage. And that's where I think the open backness kind of leaves me a little bit conflicted, but surprised at the same time. Like when it comes to the soundstage, I was expecting a pretty large soundstage due to the open back design, but I've actually heard larger. The soundstage on it was just kind of like decently sized. I would say it was just around average or to above average in terms of like the size of it for an IEM, especially considering that it's an open back and I have expectations when it is an open back design. However, what this open back design seemed to be like doing to the soundstages, rather than making it overly large, it made it nice and round, which I did like a lot, because a lot of sound stages are kind of like longer than they are far and deep, as in, you know, you get more space from your sides versus your front and the back, this oval kind of shape. This has a shape that is still kind of ovaler, but it's closer to a circle. It's a very rounded out shape, which is really good in games because you have a more accurate representation of that area around you. I do think there could be more height. There isn't the most feeling above me, but it was overall okay. It's passable. I'm a little disappointed that the soundstage wasn't like super big, but I am very pleased that it was very round. The BS1s come with two sets of different shaped ear tips, one with a larger hole, one with a smaller hole, and this will affect the soundstage a bit and the sound a bit. The smaller hole ones will give a little bit more bass punch, but just a little bit, but it will affect the soundstage, in which case it'll make it a little less circular and more ovular, just ever so slightly. But this isn't bad because you get a little bit more punchier bass at the sacrifice of the shape of the soundstage, which some people may not have a problem with, because still it's fairly round for what it is, as in like circular round, I mean. Now if you use those ear tips with the larger hole, you will get a slightly more circular sound, kind of making it very close to that circular soundstage, and I do think this does a very good job when you're using it for like more competitive shooter games, because you get that good representation of sound. And this also works well in like non-competitive games, because, you know, in a atmospheric setting you would like to see the world, or rather hear the world, as a more accurate circular world, as, you know, that is how things are around you. The world isn't presented in an oval when we listen to it as much as it is a circle. Unfortunately, I do think it could have utilized this like area a little bit better, because the imaging and sound separation was just kind of okay. It wasn't pinpoint by any means, and it wasn't like it was inaccurate. It was just generally accurate, so things were generally where they should have been, which isn't necessarily bad when you're playing games for the most part. But I do think in battles where things get really intense and there's a lot of sounds happening in the same location, you'll have a little bit of difficulty figuring out the distances and where things are in that one instance. But if you're like tracking people or hunting people down, I think it'll do an okay job. You'll get a general sense of where people are, and that's pretty much all you need in most games. But I do think if you're playing more competitive games, you will prefer a little bit more accuracy, a little bit more precision, and definitely a little bit more sound separation to hunt these sounds down, because in those large battles, like I said, these sounds can get a little bit more jumbled up on this set. However, in a more atmospheric kind of game that's less competitive, this is less of a problem, especially if you're playing a game to just kind of chill out and whatnot. You're just experiencing like the world as it is and just, you know, relaxing into the game. Like I said, overall theme with this guy seems to be that they're just very chill, relaxed sounding earbuds, and for the price, honestly, at like the $25-ish range, it's not bad, because a lot of sounds in this range are typically very warm, and very rarely do we get like a really relaxed set, which I know there are people out there who prefer that sound to just chill. And well, with that being said, that's pretty much all I have for today. So if you do want to buy this set, I will leave a link in the description in case, you know, you want to buy that. Helps give me a little kickback to help this channel grow a little bit. Also, if this video did help you out in your whole purchase decision, do leave me a like, subscribe if you want more content, hit the notification bell if you want to know when I'm posting next. Also, I stream on Twitch every now and then, so, you know, there's a little link down there somewhere. And that's pretty much all I have today. Let's God, I'm like chilled out, as I'm just sleepy. So chill. These things are so chill. I gotta stop. Okay, good night. Wait, good. I'll see you next time.